From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell and I'm in Sydney for this first programme of 2020. It's a city that's been shrouded in smoke and smog for last parts of the last 2 months, and the footage of burning bush and burning country towns and communities across the region is really heartbreaking to see. And I think if cricket can bring some light relief to some people and importantly raise some money for the hard-working services, then the sport can have a purpose to serve in the coming weeks. And next to me is somebody who knows much more about New South Wales than the rest of us, my co-host Jim Maxwell. Hello, Jim.
Ali, wonderful to see you. Maybe you should be down at the beach in a bikini like all the other New Year holiday makers, but certainly even people are frightened to go near the beach in some parts of New South Wales and Victoria because the flames are licking at their feet, and it's been just horrendous. I mean, it's all very well to say we've got smoke in our eyes in the big city, but it's more of an issue for those people who are bang in the middle of this appalling situation. So I think, as Nathan Lyon said the other day, most people have got far more to worry about than whether or not they're getting a bit of smoke in their eyes, if it's going to be an issue that stops the test match, which would be unprecedented. But it's pretty bad. I've seen it in Delhi, and now I'm seeing it in Sydney. So hopefully the wind keeps coming up and it blows it away. The problem is they're saying it won't rain for a month.
Rain is what is needed, isn't it? Charu, how are you?
Well, I mean, news about Sydney and other parts of Australia travels around the world. So, certainly heartfelt sympathy for all those who have been affected. But I'm well, thank you. Wishing everybody the best for 2020. Sounds like a special year for cricket, doesn't it, 2020? And this is on behalf of All India Radio. Happy to be home in Bangalore. Superb weather, I must say, far away from the cold waves sweeping the north of India and all the rest of the problems because of air quality there. But we're enjoying a rare cricketing lull in our part of the world.
Well, Jim Maxwell, Charu Sharma with me. We're going to start here in Sydney because Jim and I are both going to be commentating on the New Year Test match, and Australia and New Zealand's men wearing black armbands during the match to remember those who have lost their lives in the bushfires, which have devastated communities both here in New South Wales and also in Victoria as well over the New Year period. Air quality has been a talking point in the build-up to the match due to the smoke haze, and Cricket Australia do have measures in place to take the players off the field if the air quality becomes hazardous. Now, there was the Big Bash game in Canberra that was abandoned before Christmas, and a domestic Sheffield Shield game here in Sydney that was affected by a really thick haze that left some players complaining of headaches afterwards and feeling sick. And spinner Steve O'Keefe played in that match and reckoned teammates were left feeling like they'd smoked 80 cigarettes a day. Perspective, of course, because that's compared to those who have lost livelihoods and lives. But in terms of the test match, officials do need to be aware of issues. So our question is, how could it affect the players and even the public? Well, let's speak to Professor of Sports and Exercise Science, John Brewer, who used to be a fitness coach to the England men's team as well. John, welcome to Stumped.
Thank you, Alison.
How concerned would you be if you were working with one of the two teams playing a test match in these kind of conditions?
It will certainly have an impact. I think we have to understand what happens to the body when we exercise and we take air into our lungs. There are little minute sacs in the lungs called alveoli, and they extract oxygen from that air and take that into the bloodstream and then into the muscles to help provide the body with the energy that it needs. Now, cricketers, of course, aren't marathon runners, and they will be exercising fairly steadily throughout the game, but with short, sharp bursts of high-intensity exercise, whether they're running to the boundary to cut off a ball or between the wickets or bowling. And it's those periods where the body demands more oxygen. And if that air that goes into their lungs is in effect contaminated with other particles or particulates, as the physiologists like to call them, then that can really impact on that ability of those sacs in the lungs to transport the all-important oxygen into the bloodstream. And that's what causes extra fatigue, perhaps a loss of concentration, and the headaches and the nausea that players have been reporting.
There is a recognised measure of air quality, the Air Quality Index, but no particular agreement about what constitutes, a dangerous level. We've got the Australian Institute of Sport saying a reading that 150 is dangerous, but the ICC, who do have some guidelines in place for cricket now, they say that play could be suspended when it reaches 300. So who should have the final say?
It's very difficult because it will vary from one person to another. And as I think we've already heard discussed, some players will be affected more than others. So if, for example, you're a player who has something like asthma or some predisposition to lung problems, then clearly for them a much lower level is likely to be more damaging to their performance. So it will vary from one person to another. And in these situations, I believe very strongly in listening to what the players are saying. I think nobody knows more about how it feels and what they are encountering than the players themselves when they're out on the field. I would say that probably for 90% of the game, most of them won't have too much difficulty. But it's those periods of the game where they're called upon to do the short, sharp, high-intensity bursts that can really cause the problem. So I think we need to err on the side of caution, but also at the same time not be just pulling players off because it's a little bit difficult. I think players are used to putting up with difficult conditions, whether it's in their training or in their playing, but at the same time we do need to protect the safety of the players and indeed the spectators as well.
Even we've had to take some responsibility as workers there. I've just let my employers know that I'm asthmatic, but I'll be bringing my inhaler to the ground just in case. However, I'm not expected to do short, sharp bursts of high-intensity exercise. Jim, being a Sydney resident, given you've been able to experience these differing levels of smoke, and it can blow in and blow out quite quickly as well, do you think it would have an impact on the test match? Do you think it could get as bad as we've seen in recent weeks?
John Brewer's made a very good point. When the Sheffield Shield game was played here recently and there was all that smoke and it was pretty bad, there was hardly anyone in the ground. If the place is full, I think the spectators are probably going to be more affected or enough of them for it to be a problem if that's the case. And at the moment, everyone's talking about the weekend and a very hot day and so on. But I'd be surprised if they'll be leaving the field because of this. But we will see.
Charu, you've got experience of pollution, heavy air pollution in India, because actually the first instance of play being suspended in a test match because of poor air quality was in Delhi, wasn't it? And not so long ago.
Sad but true, yeah. The air quality, particularly in North India, not just Delhi, has been a matter of intense debate for the past few years, and not just in cricketing terms. Yes, a match against Sri Lanka, I think it was, that was called off, and recently against Bangladesh, there was a massive controversy about whether that test match should be held, or was it one day, in Delhi at all. There's no question that pollution has increased in the past few decades due to a lot of industrialization, as well as this whole issue of double burning of the crops, which is really the biggest culprit. But most of all, Alison, it's a question of alluvial river dust hanging around north of India. And you can't really do much about it. It's constantly in the air. And I suppose it's a question of either getting used to it or getting immune to it or whatever. I'm not condoning it. And you can see clearly when there's telecast of matches in India compared to, say, other countries, Australia, England, South Africa, it's sort of hazy almost all the time. I think cricket, unless it's really desperate, must not stop, because, there are many other more stressful, straining situations, and cricketers probably need to say, hey, listen, we made us sterner stuff, but under medical support, of course.
There is, of course, that ICC guidance, and Cricket Australia have said, I think, that they will adhere to that if they get a measure of more than 300. That allows the umpires, I guess, still at their discretion, to suspend play if they deem it necessary. John, what advice might you be giving to players and even supporters who might come along to the New Year Test?
I think it's to firstly experience it before you start playing, whether it's just to go out and walk around the ground, do some light jogging. That's for the players, obviously, just to make sure that you know what you're going to experience. Some of the spectators may want to invest in some of these face masks that we see people wearing, and if you dampen them, they can help absorb some of the particulates in the air before you breathe them in. But I think as well, it's just to listen to your body, and if you start to feel ill or uncomfortable, then don't be afraid to ask for some help, whether you're a spectator or a player, and basically just to look after your own body and put safety and caution first.
Yeah, and as Jim alluded to, the words of Nathan Lyon, he said, the true heroes of this world are the firefighters fighting the fires. We just play cricket when they're out, people there losing their lives and livelihoods. So wise words, and never a truer word spoken by indeed Nathan Lyon there.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Next on Stumped, how can England recover from a 107-run defeat in the first test against South Africa in Centurion? Now, from day one of the tour, the running theme of the trip was illness in the camp, which has affected the likes of Ben Stokes, Joe Root and Joss Buttler. They've all suffered various symptoms. It's thought to have affected up to 11 players in the camp in all. Jim, Charu, there is quite a bit England need to do better, isn't there, if they're to turn around the four-match series?
Get fit first.
Yeah,
make runs. Second, don't send the opposition in when you win the toss. Yes, and now Archer's got a shoulder injury, so I'm not sure where they're at with their personnel in terms of the Cape Town test, which should be on a surface that encourages spin. So there's a bloke I've never heard of who's apparently going to make his debut, Dom Bess.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, a young chirpy chappy.
It's a wonderful name. You can play with that one. Bess has got him in a mess, and whatever you like. But
can Best do his best to get him out of the mess?
Yes. So
Bess is more.
They're not out of the series, but clearly all of a sudden playing from a fair way behind after losing.
Well, Alison, England's a much, much better team than what happened in that first test. And I have no doubt in my mind that provided they don't continue to be unwell, that they will get the better of South Africa, because it's just one of those, lack of intensity situations worsened because of the illness that surrounds the camp. But as a team, I have to say, full respect to South Africa, but England are twice as good. The way things are structured, you just talked about New Zealand and Australia, there isn't enough time usually for teams to just get used to local conditions and, tighten up for the battles ahead. So I have no doubt that England will recover very smartly.
Well, they were twice in commanding positions, weren't they? And twice let it slip to concede that first innings deficit, which ended up being insurmountable. But the way that they lost wickets, and you mentioned they need to bat and score runs, Jim, but 7 for 39 in the batting collapse in the first innings. I mean, shot selection, Joe Root and Ben Stokes, they're experienced players, and you really do expect more.
Of course you do. And maybe Pope's going to be back for this game, and maybe Stokes can bowl a bit more than he has recently. They've got a few issues. Jimmy Anderson's near the end of his career, so they need to try and get all the moving parts working, because if they don't, they'll be 2-0 down and it's all over.
England are not travelling that well, strangely, because you remember what happened in the West Indies some time back. When they started out, they were terrible. But of course, then they recovered. I think here, too, they've just started out in this sort of listless fashion. And you do mention the illnesses, of course, so special mention of that. But I think they take time to recover. And something needs to be done to make sure that England start off running, that they land and they run rather than just sort of warm themselves into a series. I don't think they're traveling well. We can't use the excuse of winning the World Cup anymore and all the euphoria thereafter, because that's all over now.
A long time ago.
But it's just lack of intensity for sure. They're not traveling well.
Yeah, I do wonder, though, whether that one-day mindset is hard to shift back into test mode and longevity of batting innings, because so much emphasis was placed on one-day cricket and the target of winning the World Cup, that you think it might just be an elongated hangover.
Can't use that anymore, Alison. Can't use that anymore.
No, not an excuse. It might be a reality if they lost their techniques because they've been so intent on honing it for the one-day game. But what about South Africa, though? Because got to give them credit from coming from the dire straits that the team has been in behind the scenes, but then a complete change of personnel with new coach Mark Boucher. Graham Smith as director of cricket seems to have sort of taken it by the scruff of the neck. So a huge fillip for them to get a win over England under Mark Boucher now.
If you want to see the true South Africa, watch Neil Wagner. He bowls about 130 clicks. He's not quick, but he's intimidating people all the time. And he's like a marathon runner. He never stops, never gives up.
And he's not playing for South Africa.
So clearly, with Graham Smith and Mark Boucher involved, there's a bit more steel, resilience and pride in that South African team.
Yeah, well, I'm really, truly delighted that Mark Boucher and Graham Smith, just to name two, have made such a big difference and are enjoying the fact that South Africa have begun well. Can you even imagine the selection situations with all the local mandates that go on in South Africa for them to come up with their best 11? It's not easy at all. And then to win, and that too against England, I think is a fantastic start. Yes, they're playing at home. They're twice as good at home than away, which happens to most teams, really. But even just a win here against England in a test match can do a lot to get youngsters in South Africa back into the game and back into believing that they are a force to reckon with in the world of cricket, because we need them back for sure.
Rightio, just a couple of Stumped salutes to end with then this week. First of all, to Peter Siddle, who announced his retirement from international cricket during the Boxing Day test. And Siddle finishes with 221 test wickets. Jim, he was a wood chopper turned banana eating, plant-based diets, workhorse and true servant to the game, wasn't he?
Yes, a great touch of humanity in so many of the things he did, looking after teammates, spectators, even my young son at one stage back in 2009 when he was a spectator in England, and Peter Siddle looked after him very kindly by asking him to come and join him and his friends for dinner during the Lord's Test match, amongst other things. So there's a generosity of spirit that has always been there about Peter Siddle, and a wholeheartedness, typical actually of almost every cricketer Australia's ever had from the bush. Not just the bush, but his father, as you mentioned, there was a wood chopper, Steve Siddle, and he's inherited that ability to chop the batsman's stumps out of the ground on a regular basis, with a hat-trick, of course, that we'll never forget. Yeah.
Alison, I must quickly add that, no bowler in recent times has shown the kind of effort that they put into each delivery than Peter Siddle. Just see his face when he bowls. It's all twisted and it's kind of showing all the emotion of every single delivery. Gosh, the effort behind every ball. Well done, Peter Siddle.
There was this tweet from Jack Brooks, which I liked. And now Jack Brooks made his first-class debut for Northamptonshire against the touring Australian side in 2009 that included Peter Siddle. And he tweeted, "Siddle asked me for my shoe size after the game and gave me 2 pairs of brand new Adidas bowling boots. A small gesture that always stuck with me. Top bowler," he says, "and a top pro." So that just goes along with what you're saying, Jim, about that generosity of spirit. We also have to say, and final Stumped salute, arise Sir Clive. Clive Lloyd, captain of the Great West Indies side of the 1980s, was knighted in the New Year's honours. That's quite an accolade, Charu, isn't it? Great memories of Clive Lloyd.
Ooh, none probably deserved it more. What a player and what a statesman and just a wonderful person to hang around. So, Sir Clive, salute.
Great player. If you'd seen him at his best before he got injured, his fielding in the covers, unbelievable. And his batting up until almost the age of 40 was quite extraordinary. Great player and a tremendous leader of the champion West Indian side, and one of those people who's always wanted to give something back to the game, which he's done.
Yeah.
Yep, another cricketing night to go alongside all those who have gone before him. Well, that's it for this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell. Make sure you join us again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.